Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is by you. Today we have a slightly different video because we are not actually looking at an indie game per se, but we are looking at an indie game tool. Specifically, a game tool for tabletop role-playing games. If you're not quite sure what that is, then maybe this isn't the best video for you, but it is the art of collectively telling a story using an established system for the rules, and importantly, somebody to run the game, the game master or the dungeon master or the storyteller. The name changes from system to system, but it is a fairly fundamental part of any tabletop roleplay session. It's the guy that controls everything but the players. So as a player, you control your own character and the reactions and emotions and etc. of your character, and then the other players play their own characters and control just their own character specifically. And then the game master is everybody else in the world, as they like to say. They are the things that happen and the enemies you fight and all of that kind of stuff. And you're supposed to work with them to collectively tell a cool story, according to the rule of cool and all of that kind of stuff. It's a deep and complex system set in multiple different realms, from advanced sci-fi to classic high and low fantasy and all of that kind of stuff. But there is a lot of pressure on the dungeon master and the game master, so they are a little bit rarer than eager players, and it takes a lot more effort and things like that. And so people have tried to, in various ways, find ways to kind of either lighten the load on the game master or somehow, to a certain degree, replace them entirely. And I don't think you can't. See, this game calls itself the one-page solo engine. It's the game we're looking at the moment. It's the game that's on the screen. This is the pop-up. Let's just maximize the screen here. As you can see from the profile, it's kind of set to be used on a mobile phone rather than on a desktop. I think there's some room here for a desktop app. I think people have already tried that kind of thing. But based on the name, the one-page solo engine, this is intended to replace the game master and the rest of the party, I suppose, to allow you to just play alone, kind of against yourself. And I don't think this accomplishes that goal entirely. So sorry to the developers, but I don't think this is a good way to play solo. I think for two reasons. First of all, because that steps away from the entire what I consider to be the entire point of tabletop roleplay. It's not to play the game and have the game experience. It is to share a social experience with the rest of the party. It is a bunch of nerds getting together to be nerdy, and that is a hard thing to find sometimes outside of tabletop roleplay. I think it's a bit easier these days, but it used to be a really hard thing to find. And I think it also tries to replace the DM, the GM, the game master. And I think that's just fundamentally impossible, because that's not just an exercise in implementing rules and creating stories from little snippets of story. It is a kind of a meta creation process. It's the process of envisioning this entire world and making it real and making decisions for that world. And randomization and vagueness is not going to replace that. And if your player is good enough to replace that for themselves just using this app, they're probably good enough to be a GM, and they should probably go and find a party and GM for that party and do a really, really good job. And that's where I think this tool does come in, because I don't think it is a good solo engine, but I think it is a good assistant engine. A GM would make a lot of good use out of this tool to get the creative juices flowing, to track certain options and things like that. I think that's where the real power of this app exists. Maybe I'm missing the point, maybe I'm missing the process here, but that's what I think. Okay, so let us step in and take a look at this. We'll at least show you, the viewer, kind of how it works and what it looks like, in as much as I understand it. And we will, you can decide for yourselves whether you think you would try and play your own solo game like this, or if you are in a tabletop roleplay party, if you would recommend this to the GM, or if you are the GM, if you would use it for that. What are your thoughts on this? Bearing in mind this is a very early demo based on another tool, so it's a rewrite of an older tool, and it's still looking for a lot of features, a lot of themes and things like that. So, okay, that's enough talking about it. Let's jump in and look at the UI. We just have our start page, we have a send feedback link, and we have the studio that is building this link. We hit start. These are the remnants of my previous testing. So let's clear the story. And hopefully we are now starting from the beginning, looking at the UI. This is the back button to go back to the start menu. This is where we set the name of the story. I've called it 4K test. I've decided that the game system is D&D. I don't know if that makes a difference particularly. I've called it the test story, the description of the story. So we save it. We can load stories from a backup and save to a backup, because this is currently all stored just in your browser, in the cookies and the storage space in your browser. So if you clear your browser's cookies and things like that, you will lose this. So it's best to save it into a separate file, so you can then load it when necessary, so you don't lose all of the stuff just by a quick browser clear, which is very easy to do. And also the important thing to note here, a very important thing that the developers make a point of pointing out, is that none of this is saved on a remote server anyway. This is not uploaded to them. At least this is what they claim, and I see no reason not to believe them. This is all stored locally for you, so it is quite private and things like that. And only you can decide who you share it with if you want to share it. So we have saved our story, and then on the top right here are our bits and pieces of helpful information, and about, and the send feedback, the clear story option we chose, the ability to look at some references, for example the dice reference, which might be relevant in a moment. So now we look down at the big buttons at the bottom. We have the write button, which we can write information about, something happens in the story. So you can narrate the story, you can narrate what your character's actions are. This is really the creative essence of a story, is deciding what is happening in the world, deciding what your character is doing. So you are taking on both the GM role and your character's role here in writing things out, and this is the storytelling element, the narrative prose, as it were. And yeah, so you fill in your text of what you believe is happening in the story here, and that's the fictional part. Then you have the game mechanisms, where you can record game actions. For example, you try to make a jump, and you can use the rules of your game system, whatever your chosen system is, to decide whether or not you're successful and what actually happened to that. So now this is where you're keeping a track, like, I jumped over the ravine and rolled a 17, so I was successful. So something as basic as that, or or something more sophisticated about how you don't record the roll, but you relate how you did it. You scrabbled for a purchase on the other side and managed to haul yourself up, or landed neatly on both feet, perfectly, or whatever it is you decided based on your roles and the narrative requirements of the story. So remember, the idea of this is that you're GMing for yourself through the system, and that's why I say it's more practical to imagine this as a tool for GMs to use, so that they can record the mission and the quest themselves and get some ideas. When we look at the Oracle, we'll see where the ideas come from. I think it might be more useful as that, more interesting as that, because it feels like it's falling a little flat as something to compete in the realm of video games and things like that. The tabletop RP is fine, but it's fine when you are interacting with the group, who are expanding your sort of creative essence into theirs, and you're collaboratively telling a story. When you're solo, a lot of that is lost, and then you might as well play a computer game. That's what I feel anyway. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments if you disagree with that, if you think this is amazing, because I would love to see your perspective and understand it. Then we have basically a dice roller here, which is really useful, except I don't know how to use it. 2d8. Does that work? No, I don't know how I'm using this. There is a dice reference here that I'm guessing is is basically functional here. If it is, I would love to see that kind of link in here, or some kind of guide on how to use the dice expression, because I have no idea. I haven't played a lot of TTRPGs, so maybe there's like an inherent understanding of dice expressions, now that it's moved online into sort of Zoom chats and things like that. A lot of people are playing online, which is a fantastic way to play. I love that idea. But maybe there's something inherent in understanding dice expressions there that I don't get. I don't understand how to use that. Let me know. And then you can upload an image here, which is quite nice. That is the thing, the most relevant thing to kind of using the solo that I've seen here, is the ability to shove some images in. But yeah, I think otherwise this is better as a GM's tool. But then let's look at the meat of it and see how we feel in that direction, because here we have the oracles. And the oracle provides a bunch of, I suppose, randomly influenced elements in the game. So looking at the first button here, we have the oracle's yes or no. And this is an idea of, you want a yes or no answer to a particular scenario or situation. How does the GM decide it is going to end up? And you can say, for example, if you've snuck up behind someone, you're going to smack them on the back of the head. A yes would be quite likely there. So, I sneak up behind him, I hit him on the back of the head. Was I successful? It's a likely success because you were behind him stealthed and his head was exposed. So you say likely, and it says yes. So I was precariously balancing on the side of a roof and I tried to leap to another roof. Yes, I could be successful, but no, that was unlikely because it was a difficult jump. You say unlikely, and it decides no. But if we choose some, just try to run a few other options here. Okay, so then there is a no but. So you weren't successful, but something might have been a mitigating influence that helped you out, even though. And that is kind of the GM's role to decide that, and to apply something like the cooler rule to decide, even if it's a failure, in situations where you don't explicitly roll for it, even if it was a failure, but something might have happened to make it good, or even if it was a success, something might have happened to, raise the stakes or the tensions a little bit more, something along those lines. Action focus. This is where you have to do an action, and how would the action unravel? What kind of action does it need to be? Topic focus, complex equipment. I'm not quite sure how you would apply these outside of being a GM, other than random ways to try and create a story. So where there are certain actions that you are either driven to do or have to do, certain topics that come up, and you can build a story around them, certain details within the topics. If you need a detail in a particular scenario that you're trying to build, it might be something like that. And then the question of how much. For example, you have a detail, you create the detail, how much is that detail influencing either the overall story or the situation or whatever is happening. Maybe it's a surprisingly lacking influence on it, or maybe it's far more than expected, or something like that. So these are randomizers to help build a story. These are randomizers for a GM to take the next step. I mean, pacing is a hugely difficult thing to do in GMing and story writing in general. How do you decide whether or not to move the action forward? And when you do have to move the action forward, how do you apply that? For example, the players are getting a bit antsy, a bit restless. Something needs to happen. Click on pacing move. Add a random event. Something harms someone physically, and it involves meaningful rumors. Let's look at others. Advance a threat. So your existing threats, let's move one of them forward. Advance the plotline. Existing plotlines, move one of them forward. Foreshadow trouble. So maybe this isn't a significant event in itself, but you are showing your players, something's coming, and here is a sign, a foreshadowing sign of something that's coming. There's a failure move. If something fails that the player has tried to do, offer a choice. Maybe there is an outcome that can turn into a choice, or the failure move itself could foreshadow serious trouble coming. They screwed up, and as the bad guy runs away from them because they failed to stop him, he laughs over his shoulders. Haha, this kind of trouble is coming. Look to the east or something, and there's a big army to the east or something like that. So yeah, this is why I'm saying this is a really, really powerful tool for the GM, because these are little intellectual exercises built in with a randomizer that then goes, hey, here is something interesting to do to move your plots on, your world on a little bit further forward in terms of how the players are interacting with it. You can choose random events, and these just gives you ideas for random events, set scenes. So you want your players to move into a new scene. Here is a scene. Here are some scene ideas, and then jokers, which basically a randomizer you can throw into whatever is existing at the moment. That gives you an idea. Is the kind of the man runs into the room with a gun idea. I think it was Raymond Chandler always said, if you never know what to do, have a man run into the room with a gun. And while that might necessarily be the best idea, just thinking about that, here is your scene, whatever your scene is, a completely prosaic scene of any sort, you don't know how to move it forward, you don't know how to end it. What would happen if a man ran into the room with a gun? How would you then build that into the story? What does that mean for the rest of the story? What is going on there? And you might not get to do that, but it is a way to kind of kickstart your creative process, the way you think. And I think these are incredibly powerful. So you might not decide on using any of these, but it might go, ooh, this is interesting, but what if it came from this angle or that angle? And that's how we build ideas. That's how we creatively manifest ideas. And I think these are very, very powerful ideas for that kind of stuff. And then you have generators, which is essentially the same thing, but on a different level. Ideas for major plot hooks, sort of just generic ideas. The ideas for dungeon entrances. It doesn't explain the engines to you, but it does say, here are some themes, here are some tropes that that might be the way to lead into a dungeon, and here are some ideas and tropes for a room in the dungeon. Here are some ideas for NPCs. Incredibly powerful. And I will say I can see how you can use this to generate a story by yourself, the solo engine element of this. But I see it much more powerfully in the idea for a GM, or even just a writer, to then create a story around using these as little sort of thematic kickoffs, little starting points to create an idea around. I don't quite understand Hex. I think this is to do with a specific bit of terrain in what is often the map that role players use, which is this hexagonal. It's a map made of hexagonal rather than square elements, and I think this might help you to generate a series of hexes that then helps you. Oh, we're just getting nothing much. Apparently, this is a very boring set of hexes, and then there's an event that you might want to plug into a particular hex. Again, I suppose these are giving us sort of common and nothing as your player is moving through very dull terrain. A random event, you would, I suppose, then choose random event and set the scene over there, and the kind of properties of the event are you have to communicate carefully. Technical current need, I suppose that would be if you need equipment or something like that, and the complication all is not as it seems, so there's a hidden thing underneath it. And again, these are very, very powerful ways of building a story. And then there's some game mechanics here, some different kinds of roles and things that you can trigger as needed, or as a GM you can trigger as your players need. And so that's it for me showing this thing out. And I think hopefully you can see what I mean when I don't think this is a good solo engine. I think this is a good GM tool, but it is usable as a solo engine. But if you use this effectively as a solo engine, consider becoming a GM and finding a party to play with. And that is my sort of gameplay show and tell. So if you are just here for the gameplay elements, thank you for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. Don't forget to like if you like this video, dislike if you dislike this video, leave a comment telling me why, subscribe if you want to see more stuff about actual indie games, not tabletop roleplay tools too much, unless I find a whole bunch of these in the future. I'll probably take a look at them. Yeah, and thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Don't forget to follow the link in the description to come and give these devs a love and this tool a look at, and give the devs some feedback on that. If, however, you are here for the critiques, well, obviously the first main critique that I've already given is this shouldn't be for a single player. This should be for a GM to help him play with. But an interesting inclusion, and I'm reluctant and wary to mention this because it is a very, very hot topic at the moment, and I don't think it is something that is ready now. But a future inclusion, and the devs have probably already thought about this, would be an AI element. If this is meant for a solo person to play, a very constrained, very contained AI that then uses these randomizers to then build a story might be a strong idea, although I have seen people try and use AI and AI-like tools to build stories and role plays with before, and it is very, very difficult to have something inherently helpful, something that actually follows a cohesive story in a way that is rational and expected by the people. AIs get very weird very easily, so they are not ready to roleplay with yet, especially not as a GM. But they will be at some point in the future, and that was where they should be carefully implemented in a tool like this for an actual solo person to have something approximating a roleplay experience. Although, again, I don't ever see an AI, at least not within our lifetimes, come even close to approximating actually interacting with a group of people and tabletop role-playing with them. Because the joy is for those of us who find it difficult to interact with quote-unquote cooler people because we are very nerdy. Stuff like tabletop roleplay is a collection of nerdy people. You interact on nerdy levels, and suddenly the things that are negatives in your social interaction become positives, and that is where the real power lies. And there's that. So that's my first critique. The second critique is I think this needs sounds. I think this needs a music system plugged into it, either linking to a Spotify playlist or whoever the player is, local music store or something like that. There should be buttons in here where you can find music files that the player is injected and then can play. Some kind of free music sources or stuff that the player owns or the GM owns. There's copyright concerns there, but I think it would be a very, very powerful inclusion. This does need theme setting music and sounds built into it. I would love to see that. And then theming, it would be, this has obviously got a sort of a pseudo medieval fantasy theme layout. It would be nice if you could have different skins for like sci-fi or techie if the guy's playing alternity or something sci-fi-ish, or steampunky or whatever. It would be nice if this theme could be updated with something like that. It's a minor change, but it would be an interesting addition for the future. I'd really love this in a sort of a cleaner sort of minimalist cyberpunk theme. That would be quite cool. And really that's it. That's all I can say at this level. My critiques aside, I still think this is a very, very cool and very, very powerful tool, and I would love to see this take on and go further and see where it unpacks to. If we have a look here under the About section, we have the details of the dev and the studio doing it, and some links for them. Obviously there's more links, the same links on their itch.io page, and some credits and things inside here. UI built using Kenny Adventure UI pack. And the title screen art is AI generated, then sliced and animated. So there's that little bit of AI already being used in there. Another assurance that they're going to store our they don't get access to our data. It's all stored locally. You can't really ask for any more than that, and it is an up-to-date tool using modern tools, which I like to see. Click the Oracle button to make that all go away again. And that's it. That's all from me. Hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully that was a good look at an interesting tool here in Itch.io, and thank you for watching the video, and I hope to see you in the next video, and goodbye.